Hi, my name is Chapman and I'm starting my own business. And I want to invite you to come along and follow this video series and take any idea that you have, take it off the shelf and get out there and build it and release it to the world. So in this video today, we're going to take the existing server that we created initially in our previous video and go through the steps to secure it and actually install WordPress onto it, so that we have our very basic WordPress install. So to kick things off here, let's switch over and look at everything here. So where we last left off, I had updated my server to make sure everything was fine. I'll just quit back out of here, exit, and that will close the connection. I used SSH to log into the remote server. So essentially right now, this black screen right here, this is my machine. So if I were to type any commands in here, I'm actually typing commands as myself, or typing commands into my machine. And what I want to do is remotely log into our other server, and by doing that right here, again, you may have to type in a password there for your root user. Please choose a very secure password, something random and alphanumeric, because attacks, you're going to see by the end of the series that attacks will end up coming at you every few seconds constantly, and it'll drain you. So anyways, so let's kick off. To actually install WordPress, I highly recommend that you find a current guide to do that. So I'm recording this video in November 2016. And right now, Ubuntu is in 16.04, and we're going to be using the latest version of everything. So if you watch this in a year or more, maybe a year is probably still a good time. But anything more than that, make sure that you're using the latest versions of things that are available to you. And just some Googling will help you find that out. So here I'm going to follow the guide. This is a very comprehensive guide, and it talks about a couple different things. So there's some prerequisites that we need to set up an initial user before we even start this guide. So I'm going to follow that process. And I'm going to... so I've already SSH into my machine as a root, and I'm going to create the new user. Command is add user. I'm going to call it Chapman. And then I'm going to give Chapman a good password. And then I'm going to press enter to fill these with blank values. This is just housekeeping stuff for larger companies if you needed to know what user is located in what room and what their phone number is. Just some meta information. So we just created a base level user. Let's turn them into an admin user. User mod -ag Chapman. Forgot a brief command there. Sudo. So user mod ag sudo Chapman, and what that's going to do is it's going to add me to the group. So you'll notice if something goes wrong here, I got some strange output. You can actually type man in front of any command. So user mod, and it brings up the manual on how to use it. More than just that, though, it tells you what these little dashes actually mean. So here we're doing dash lowercase a capital G. So lowercase is append. Add the user to supplementary groups. Use only with the dash G. So let's go find dash G. Up here, list of supplementary groups. Okay, so the groups are subject to the same restrictions. So basically, it's going to be dash G followed by the group name, which is exactly what we're doing here, -g sudo. We'll have to add this user to the sudo group. So that's just some background on kind of what's going on here. Remember, you don't need to know too much of the specifics of what's going on, but it will help. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here. The next part here is making it so that I no longer have to use a password to log into my server. And that's kind of a nice thing, because it's going to make it more secure. It means that only my computer right here is going to be able to log in to the server. So I'm going to go ahead and on my local machine, note my local machine, you can go ahead and run the SSH Key Gen and follow these instructions to generate an SSH key. Now I'm going to skip that because I already have. my own SSH key, but now I need to copy the SSH key over. So I'm going to use the program called SSH Copy ID, and just to make certain that it's there, I'm going to run brew install SSH Copy ID. And okay, so it's already installed. It's a good deal. And if you don't, or if you aren't able to run brew, you can very easily go and follow my other video of how to install brew and what it's all about, and that should help you there. So after that, locally, with that installed, we're going to go off the directions here. We're going to say SSH copy ID Chapman, which is the user that I created, at the IP address on my remote server. So this is going to copy my SSH ID into Chapman on that remote server. It's going to do all of these steps for us right here with just that one command. So to do that, I need to type in Chapman's password that I entered, and it's good. So now I can SSH as Chapman at that IP address, and I will no longer have to use my password. I just automatically get in. So it's really critical that you stop using root as soon as possible. Think of root as it's your super user. It's basically Superman. With that super user power, you can really start to mess up different parts of your server. Think of Superman as, trying to drink out of a fragile glass. He may just crush it, and unfortunately, you don't want to do that sort of thing throughout your server. So what we'll end up doing is we'll be running individual commands as the root user, as sudo, and that will help us to not destroy too many things. Now, again, if all of this is just completely foreign, if you're starting a business and you're not really deep into web, that's fine. This is just a simple recipe to follow that will get you through the process of starting your own server and making sure that it's secure. So that is all I need from there, because we skipped all that with that little command. I'm going to now disable the password authentication, which is definitely something I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and logged into my remote server, I'm going to run that command. So sudo is that run this one command as your super user. And nano is a text editor on here, and this is the file path of what we want to edit. So by pressing enter, it's going to ask for Chapman's password, which I have to type in. Now it's asking for the password because I'm trying to activate that super user stuff. I'm able to SSH into the server without a password, but to do those sensitive operations, you do need that password. So right here, I'm editing this file, and the cursor is up there at the top. And the fun thing is you cannot click around and change stuff. This is a text editor. You can hold Option and click and get halfway there, but it's not exactly easy. So the thing that we're looking for is password authentication, and we want to turn that to no. So I'm going to press Control W on my Mac and look for password. I need a little bit more. Oops. I'm going to keep searching. Permit empty passwords. All right, so right here we have password authentication, and I'm going to turn that into no. So after that is set, I'm going to look for public key. So Control W for find, public key. Public key authentication is yes, that is correct. I'm going to then search for this last one. Challenge authentication response, no. All right. So when that's completed, when I've made those changes, these are just changing config variables through the server. I'm going to press Control X to quit. Here at the bottom, it's asking me, do I want to save my changes? Yes, with a Y. It wants me to then decide where I want to save this file to. If I just press enter, it saves it over top of itself. So that should be all done. All right, so next up, I want to set up the basic firewall. And for our purposes here, we're just going to explain a firewall as a tool that lets you limit what can be accessed through your server. So people can't nefariously access everything, or it reduces how much can be nefariously accessed. So I'm going to run the command sudo ufw. ufw is the firewall command. And this is going to give us a list of all possible things that we can turn on or off in the firewall. So right now, our open SSH is there, and we want to enable that. We want to allow it so that when we enable the firewall right here, it doesn't kick us out, because right here it may disrupt your connection. And it will disrupt your connection if you do not properly turn it on. And should you do that and you get kicked out there, you can never get back into the server. Just go ahead and destroy the server through DigitalOcean's droplet interface and then restart the video and you'll be fine. So here we can check the status. Everything's allowed, and that's good. So there we have our initial server. Get rid of that. All right, so we have the first check off the list. So now we need to install the Lem Stack. So that stands for Linux, Nginx, MySQL, and PHP. And this is essentially what's needed to run your WordPress server. You need the operating system. You need the Nginx. This lets other computers connect to the web server of your computer. MySQL is your database, and PHP is the dynamic language that WordPress is written in. So we're going to go ahead and follow this guide to set that up. Actually, this guide is written by the same author. Very, very good setup here. So we've already done this, the apt-get upgrade. So let's go ahead and run the next command of install Nginx. And yes, I would like to install that. So Nginx is now installed, and we're actually live to the world right now. So we will be as soon as we allow Nginx in the firewall. So when we look there, we are allowing Nginx through. And I'm gonna jump down here. All right. So essentially we can just grab the IP address of our server, and we can just directly go to that in a browser, and you should see the welcome to Nginx. So at this point, if you're not seeing this, things are misconfigured. Go back and start the video again, destroy your server, and try to get where we need to be. So as we continue on though, so we have Nginx installed. Now it's time to install MySQL. So actually, rather than install MySQL, I'm going to have you install something newer and better. And it is MariaDB. So that's MariaDB-server. So MariaDB is the successor to MySQL. A bunch of really good devs got together and said that, since Oracle, which is a company that owns a very powerful database system, also called Oracle, they also bought the open source thing called MySQL, and it's kind of like an oil company buying up solar technology so that they can kind of slow the development of solar while they sell their oil. So people got kind of fed up with MySQL not coming out with a lot of innovation, so they created MariaDB instead. So I'm going to go ahead and install MariaDB, and yes to continue. And once that is installed, I want to run the same command right here. So MariaDB is a MySQL replacement, meaning that the only time that I need to say MariaDB instead of MySQL is right here during the installation process. So going to sudo MySQL secure installation. It's going to run a script that lets me specify and tighten down the security of MySQL or MariaDB, as it says right there. So current password for root is blank. So I'm going to press enter. And then yes, I would like to set a root password. The new password, I'm going to make something complex. And I want to, yes, remove anonymous users and disallow remote login. We're going to remove the test database, and we will reload table privileges as well. So that just kind of like locks up all sorts of, not security holes, but just testing areas that can be areas to be attacked on. So as we scroll through here, the next step is step 3. We're going to be installing PHP is up next. So to install that, I will sudo apt-get install PHP, PHP FMP or FPM, and also PHP MySQL. Those 3 packages are needed to install PHP, to get it to work with Nginx, and then to get it to work with MySQL. Because what good is a dynamic language if you can't hook it up to a database? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and change nano the PHP Ini file. And we're essentially looking for the fixed file path. So I do another search with W. And we are going to uncomment that. And we would like to set it to 0. And we will close that and save. So one thing to note, this PHP Ini file, we're going to have to get back into this file later for WordPress. WordPress requires us to modify a few things there. So we're going to go ahead and just remember to come back here for that. So after we make a change to our PHP Ini file, we need to reload or restart PHP. And now comes the very fun server configuration stuff. So basically, we are looking for this right here. We're going to grab this whole server statement, copy it to our clipboard, and deviate a little bit from the directions here. I'm going to, instead of nanoing this file, I'm going to sudo copy the same file, etc. You can press tab and that's going to autocomplete some stuff for you too. So Nginx, sites available, default. So I'm going to copy that to etc Nginx, oops, sites available, default dot back. So basically I'm copying the existing file into a new file called .back. And all that does is it just gives me kind of a backup so that I can always come back here. .bak doesn't, you call this whatever you'd like it to. It's still just a text file, but it just gives us that option to always go back. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that file. I have to sudo remove etc Nginx, sites available, default. So I'm going to remove the copy that's there, and then instead of sudo, I will now, or yeah, sudo, but instead of rm, now we nano, and this will be a blank file at this point that I can just paste in all the information from right here. And we're going to want to change things around. So here we need the server name, which is the IP address of our server. In this case, I'm actually going to apply my own domain. So I'm going to call this reactivepixel.com. And it's just a domain that I bought already. So all of that should be good. And we will exit out, save. And it's at this point we want to test the Nginx file to see if everything was configured okay, and it is okay. So now we can reload Nginx with that new configuration, and it's good. So to just double test this, or to double check this, we can say, I'm going to, I'll shorthand this. I'll say cat, and then I'll replace this into var www HTML info.php. So what this does is it's basically saying create whatever we type into this file. So of course it's going to permission deny me because I need to sudo it. Must be a super user, and it doesn't like to do that. So we'll do it the right way. We'll nano it. And we'll just paste our PHP info in there, save, quit. And then now at this point, we should be able to go to /info.php. And if PHP was properly installed, we now should see our PHP info. So that small command that we added to that file, this lists out all the configuration for our PHP server, which is really good. So the fact that we get it, we are seeing PHP rendering properly. So we want to remove that file so that others can't see it and use it against us in any way. So hopefully, yep, okay. So that is that. So next up, that is our whole stack. So right there we have MariaDB, Linux, Nginx, and PHP all installed. So it's at this point that we're able to continue on. Now, just to bridge the gap here, I'm going to go into networking under DigitalOcean. And I'm going to add a domain called reactivepixel.com, and we're going to tie it to our test. So just by doing that, I should be able to see my Nginx is there. And if I go to reactivepixel.com, I also see it works. So what's happening is reactivepixel.com is just being pointed at that IP address. So that's all that means. And I could look it up and view the records and make sure everything's fine, but it's good. That is how to prep the server for install. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video short right here, and we'll do another video specific to configuring SSLs and also your WordPress configuration as well. So look forward to that in just a moment.